and welcome back to another episode of Quick Spin, the Autoweek podcast that gets the essence of the automobile. Today, we are talking about the 2022 Honda Civic Sedan. That's right, the 11th generation Civic. You can take a look at this Civic on our Instagram page right now. That's at Autoweek USA. And hey, while you're out there, why don't you cruise over to our Facebook page, click that like button. That way, we get all the great Autoweek content we deliver daily sent directly to you. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about this Honda Civic, but first, we have to pay the bills. In case you missed it, Road & Track is now fully loaded. The magazine you've loved for years is now the ultimate lifestyle magazine for the automotive enthusiast. And now, when you join the Track Club by Road & Track, you'll receive 6 supersized issues, access to digital content, dozens of partner privileges, exclusive invites to editorial events, and first dibs on insider automotive events both online and around the world. Hop on in by visiting roadandtrack.com/autoweek. That's roadandtrack.com/AUTOWEEK. And Mark, tell me about the 2022 Honda Civic Sedan. This is the all-new Civic, right?
This is, of course, the 11th generation of the Civic. It goes all the way back to 1973, which was, at that point, I was already 152 years old, and I think you were going to be born about 6 decades later. But in that time, since 1973, when it debuted in the U.S. market, Honda sold 12 million Civics. Did you know that? 12 million. That's not bad. Comes in 4 models: LX, Sport, EX, and Touring. I like to drive the Sport and the Touring.
I also drove the Sport and the Touring, and we should be very clear, Honda will not be continuing the Coupe, as I understand, so it'll be kind of limited to 2 body styles, the hatchback and the sedan. Of course, we have not driven the hatchback yet because that's still to come.
Yeah, that's correct. But a wide variety of cars. And I think the interesting thing is the breadth of the pricing on these. You can start out with the LX, which is the entry level or base trim, for $22,695. You can go all the way up to the Touring, which is very well loaded, for $29,295. And in between that, of course, you have the EX and the Sport. So there's something out there for everybody. And a lot of people can afford something in the 20s. So it should be a pretty popular car, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I think that, it's dealing with the same problem that the 10th generation Civic was dealing with. It's such a good car that it's hard to kind of maybe climb the price charts. You know, the EX is such a good car and the LX is such a good car that getting the Touring is a little bit harder to do, I think. But yeah, it's a lot of car for the money, just like the previous generation.
Yes, and I understand that you are still in love with the previous generation Civic. Is that true?
My girlfriend has one, and it is the best car at the Wren household, no question. Honestly, the 10th generation Civic was kind of a watershed moment for Honda, or at least Honda's small car, even though the Civic is, let's not mince words, it's not a small car anymore. This is a fairly large car at this point. That being said, it was such a good car, the 10th generation, and the 11th generation builds on that, right? It's saying it's all new is a bit of a stretch.
Well, no, because I spoke to our good friend Carl Pulley at Honda, and he elaborated on that for me. I said, it says all new and all the stuff here, but I'm seeing the same engines, and it looks kind of, the tensions and everything. And he laid it out that he called it evolution. So it's not like completely ground up white sheet of paper redo, but it is what he called an evolution. So, for instance, little things like the A-pillars are 2 inches more rearward. The overall length is 1 inch longer. The wheelbase is 1.4 inches longer. So they've redone a lot of, if we're just talking about the architecture, they've redone a lot of that, sort of tightened it up, made it stronger and better. So you get, for instance, 14% increase in bending resistance. And there is also an increase in torsional rigidity. The rear overhang shorter. The front overhang is a little bit longer for increased pedestrian impact. Although that doesn't sound nice to say pedestrian impact, isn't it? Let's say pedestrian protection. I think that was the word that Honda uses. But there's more noise insulation throughout the whole thing. And there's overall an increase in driving dynamics, measured not, just by the seat of the pants, and not based on whether you are afraid you'll offend your girlfriend who has a 10th generation Civic, but it should be better all around. And the engines, even though the powertrains, even though you have some, if you look at the base specs, the size and everything, it is an evolution again in the engines. There are 2 engines here, the 2.0 liter naturally aspirated engine making 158 horsepower, or you can move up to the 1.5 turbo, which gives you 180 horsepower. And those engines are, like, for instance, the turbo gets a new valve train, which includes VTEC on the exhaust. For instance, the fuel efficiency has gone up. The turbo gets 6 more horsepower, 50 more pound-feet of torque. So, yes, in one way you could say that it's not all new, but in another way you could say, yeah, it kind of is, and it's all new in the right direction and a little bit better.
Speaking of directions, Mark, the producer is yelling at me to kick to the walk around, but I should preface this by saying the interior. Cannot miss talking about the interior, which I think is touched on in this walk around, because the interior is fantastic. But let's go to that walk around right now. And we are here with the 2022 Honda Civic. That's right, the 11th generation Civic. New for 22. I don't know how many times I can say that in one segment, but we're trying. This is the Sedan, wholly restyled car. I think the styling on this one's going to be a bit more polarizing than the previous generation, but the previous generation was, polarizing in and of itself. So the 2 liter and the 1.5 liter turbo both carry over, as well as the CVT. The manual transmission's gone on the Sedan, but it was anyway with the 10th generation after, I think, 2020 or 2019 was the last year for the stick. But the good, the bad, let's talk about it. The good, the interior in this Civic is phenomenal. Huge increase over the last generation. A bunch of knobs, bunch of buttons. There's a honeycomb insert in the dash. Seat space, it's about the same. It's maybe a smidge easier in the rear, but it has a longer wheelbase than the other model, the previous generation. So does that translate into rear legroom? No, the answer is no. That's from Honda. But it does give you a little more space in the car. The extended wheelbase is mostly for handling purposes, which we're going to get into in a little bit, even though I don't think the 1 inch longer wheelbase affects handling all that much. Now on the exterior, smooth design, significantly different than the previous generation. They moved the A-pillar back a couple of inches. The key locks are gone, and the doors, no more key lock holes, just a normal door handle. More importantly, they lowered the belt line in the new Civic, much lower than the previous generation. A couple inches at the rear. Huge change to the greenhouse of the car. Again, I'm partial to the previous generation, so that has that it makes it more distinct. It definitely looks significantly different than the previous generation, but it is a huge change. Let's go for a drive. But Mark, let's talk about that interior really fast, because I don't know if my walk around really captured it enough. It is, again, phenomenal.
I went in, I got to drive, as I said, both the Sport and the Touring, and I liked the Touring a lot more. It had the digital, the 10.2 inch, the optional 10.2 inch, all digital customizable instrument display, which I thought, if you go any bigger than 10.2 in that car, it's just going to blot out the sun. And I kind of like that. It had Sirius XM satellite navigation, it had leather, power seats. It was just, it was almost a Cadillac in there.
Almost a Cadillac indeed. Honda did angle the gear selector towards the driver to give it a more sporting feel, and also gave it a sport button. Those are the 2 big additions to the gear selector area, that cup holder area.
Well, talking about gears, I think maybe we should wait until you do your driving impression, because we got to talk about the CVTs, don't we?
Oh, we have to talk about the CVTs, and spoiler, I'm a big fan of the Honda CVT, so let's go to that. And let's go for a drive. What a chime that is. All right, again, a 2022 Honda Civic, which I'm sure you've heard me say a lot in previous minutes. We are trucking. Yep. This is the touring model, again, the 1.5 liter turbocharged engine and the CVT. A lot of interesting things on the interior when the car is running. In the little gauge cluster, you see, a little facsimile of the Honda Civic. I don't think it changes with the color of the car, but this one ironically does match in this gray paint. Fun thing is the lights light up, and hey, while you're driving,
little icons of the cars in front of you also show up. It is quite the ride. Also, you can see that I'm belted in. There's no other passengers in the car. Pretty funny, this digital gauge cluster, all digital on the touring model. So while the powertrain of this new Civic is mostly a carryover, obviously from the previous generation, 10th generation Civic, of which I'm a huge fan, I should say. This 1.5 liter does have a little more power. More importantly, it's a revised tuning on the CVT. Kind of wild, actually. The auto response is, as we're going to see in a second, it's maybe, I wouldn't say more aggressive on tip end, but it's more apparent. Also apparent on this bad boy is the sport mode switch, which is new for Civic. It affects throttle map and stuff. It does add a little bit of fun to the game. Is it necessary? I don't know, but it does add some fun. We're looking at a lot of knobs here, which you might think is insignificant, but it is handy. Knobs and controls, physical controls for the HVAC, physical controls for the radio. It is a bit of a change if you're jumping from a, say, 2015 car to this car. There's a bit of a learning curve, but hey, what are you gonna do? Power delivery, 6 horsepower difference, but man, it feels pretty potent. Steering maybe a smidge heavier than the previous generation car. Road noise, you're listening to it now, pretty quiet. We're trucking along at 50 miles an hour just on a country road, maybe not the best maintained, but road noise, from the tires, not bad. Wind noise, low. This is a competent, sound little compact car that does everything you'd expect a Civic to do. But I think I've rambled on enough. Let's head back to the studio.
If there's a young person in your life who's really into cars, give them the gift of R&T Crew, the ultimate subscription box by Road and Track for kids ages 6 to 10 every other month. A box is delivered to their door and is stuffed with cool accessories, fun activities, and a magazine check full of facts, stories, games, and more. Sign up now to receive the all-new Snack Attack box and enter code Autoweek for 10% off an annual box subscription. Just head to rtcrew.com, that's rtcrew.com, and use code Autoweek. Exciting, but Mark, we've never done this one before. But when we get to the end of the show, the tail end of the show, we hit the hard-hitting question of what makes this car so special. What is its essence? But we've never done this as a tag team, so I will still pitch it directly to you, Mark. You have much more experience and much more. You're the sage between us, so I will pause it. I will ask the big question, Mark. What is the essence of the 2022 Honda Civic sedan? What is its raison d'etre?
Well, it's kind of riding on this long and storied history, like we said, going all the way back to 1973 here in the U.S., when it lit a fire among enthusiasts, and it was a big deal. The whole Fast and Furious, if you'll recall, the first movie, those were Honda Civics that they were driving before they got into the ridiculous supercars and things. Dom Toretto had all those Honda Civics parked around there. It was a huge thing in the import scene. It was the biggest car there. And now, the company has to make money off it. And there aren't that many Dom Torettos out there actually buying new cars. So as a business decision and as a reflection of the reality of the market, I think what you have here is a comfortable, very well appointed and, adequately good driving car.
I agree. Obviously, we should mention that Dom Toretto and his group of thieves were using the Civics for criminal activity, so we do not condone the theft of DVD players. But, hey, they were successful at it, so what are you going to do? But that being said, I think that's a good place to put a pin in it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me in our little drive, Mark. I'm so glad we both got to put these cars to the test to kind of, put our opinions and see which one, see where they meet.
Yes, and we'll let the market decide.
The market will decide. If you could go to the Apple Podcast Store, drop us a 5-star review. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to hear about in the future. Let us know what you think of the show. As long as it's positive, that's all I care about. Or, hey, let me know where you're leaving reviews elsewhere so I can give you a shout out. While you have your phone out, why don't you head over to our Facebook page and click that like button. That way you get all the great Autoweek content we deliver daily sent directly to you. And I know I say this at the end of every episode, but I mean it. Without your listenership, none of this would be possible. So thank you for listening.